Hi, and welcome back to the Iceberg Mountain. We're really excited to have you here. It's been a bit of a hiatus, but we're back in the swing and we're ready to really challenge ourselves with looking at how we can change education a little bit and how we can achieve our life goals, which we refer to as getting to our mountain.
It's been a crazy past year where I had a different role and I didn't have much time to work on this podcast. But yeah, I'm super excited. We've collected a lot of content to talk about, and especially this one. This week, we're going to talk about Ali Gallop, this amazing videographer who was a former creative director for Facebook, the business marketing side of things. He used a lot of storytelling, and then he actually created his own company, There's This Place, which just works with a whole bunch of organizations on their story and how to tell their story through video.
His message inside his videos are always really creative ways of getting you to think about your thinking. And I think that's what draws us to him. And this episode in particular is called Stop Pouring and Start Drinking. And when David sent it to me, I thought it was a funny title to start with, but it really is such a powerful message hidden inside.
Basically about how to bring fulfillment when you are trying to learn something. So yeah, in the video, Ali uses the representation of water. Basically, he's working, and after a couple hours passes, he realizes the cup is empty. So he takes the cup, fills it up with water, and then comes back, and then goes back to work. And at the end of the day, he realizes he didn't drink the water. And this is the epiphany that he got.
I didn't drink the water. It's like I've tricked myself into thinking that just by getting the glass of water, it's going to somehow hydrate me. And this is the perfect representation for my lifelong relationship with knowledge.
And it's connected to education in the sense that students are constantly gaining knowledge. But there are moments where they don't actually use that knowledge to do something. So there's this unfulfilling feeling that a student might get. Once they learn this knowledge, they want to apply it in some type of authentic, personal way. Ali talks about the lack of fulfillment that he feels, and he eloquently said this amazing quote: "The crazy part about it is that taking knowledge of how to do something and then applying it to a real world situation is what makes us feel good about ourselves. But there's no fulfillment in just having the knowledge." So it's just, again, making sure as educators that we obviously focus on the knowledge, showing how the knowledge and skills are so important, not only in school, but for their future work that they will be doing. And this kind of connects to an article I read about STEM education, because I've been leading some of the STEM work at our school. It's called A Conceptual Framework for Integrated STEM Education. Within that article, it uses the pulley system as a representation of STEM, seeing how all the different subject areas are the gears of the different parts of the pulley. But that's all good, having the knowledge and skills of these subject areas. But the pulley's goal is to actually lift something. The load, the thing that it's lifting, represents the situated learning, which basically says that real-world activities and social interactions are the basis of what STEM learning is all about. So again, it kind of represents how just because you have the knowledge and skills and you learn those things without applying it in a real authentic context, it's kind of meaningless. You have a pulley system with no load that you're actually pulling. So the pulley system becomes useless.
There's another part in this video that I think is really important and relates to what you just said. And he has a quote in here where he says,
For some strange reason, I've become this person that thinks that having the knowledge of how to do something in some way equates to actually doing the thing.
And I wanted to share just a quick example of that from this week. And it actually relates to something we talked about in a previous episode, which is this little toy my friend Rob made for me. It's this little running person toy. I've been meaning to make one of these for probably 4 years. I will say I've probably saved 4 or 5 different links to this in Instagram. I never got around to making one. And the thing is, in my head, I'm like, yeah, I know how to make this. I can bend wire, I can cut paper, and I do all these things. But then this week I actually made one. And then I realized, like, I don't know how to make this. For students, what that might look like in a classroom is taking them out of their comfort zone and having them use the skills that you've taught or the things that you're working on in a way that shows them that they have maybe an incomplete picture. So for me, when I started to build this was like an incomplete picture. And so I needed to go back and sort of work on a couple of things to be able to get it right. And I think sometimes we need to give students that opportunity to kind of fail a little bit and realize that they need to maybe add on to their knowledge or put their knowledge into practice so that they can see what they do know and what they need to work on. Ali also talks about the idea of not just collecting knowledge, but of using it as well. And I think sometimes we fall into that trap, I'm sure everybody does, of we gather up all this information, but we don't always go to the next point of actually utilizing it in a way that changes things for us. So for instance, he says, I'm going to save this so I can get back to it later. And I think for me, when he said that in the video, I resonated with that comment so much because when I'm looking at Instagram, I have all these different boards in there that I save things to. There's one for the makerspace, one for inspirational thinking, one for photography, one for the Iceberg mountain. I have all of these boards, but I was talking to David about it the other day. I very rarely go back to them. And I think for me, as a reflective piece from watching this video, it's something that I want to be able to do is either decide I'm going to go and do what it is that's happening in this video or website or whatever it is and get it done, or maybe let it go unless it's a really significant thing that I genuinely think I really do need to go back to this. Because otherwise I think it just becomes almost like a bit of a weight that you carry around a little bit in the back of your mind, just another thing to look at down the path that you might not have time to do.
So in the last 2 years, I've been really diving into books, reading books, but also listening to a lot of ebooks. And if you just look at my audio playlist, my library is just full of books. And I've read and listened to all of them. But what I realized was that I wasn't drinking my cup of water. There wasn't much change in my life. And so the last year, I decided to take all the notes and really reflect on those notes and write in my journal about them. And there has been a transformation of the work that I do at school, but also the stuff that I'm doing in my personal life.
I'm going to reflect just on my mountain. So we have a mountain statement. It is like the mountain that I'm working towards. And mine is to be an expert maker and to have the freedom to live a creative life. And one of the goals I have in order to achieve my mountain statement is upskilling myself throughout the year with different things. One thing David and I have arranged is that we're going to do a knife making course in a couple of weeks. One of the things that's come along with that is I decided last week to get into knife sharpening because that seems like an obvious connection. So I bought myself some whetstones. I watched probably 15 videos about sharpening knives. And again, it's one of these things where having water in your cup does not equate to having the water in your mouth. And so I bought all these whetstones and I've realized over the couple of weeks that I've been working on it, although I knew the mechanics of what needed to happen, it wasn't really until I started actually trying to sharpen a knife that I found the simple things like one way when you sharpen is your dominant hand, and when you sharpen the other side, it's much more difficult because it's kind of your non-dominant hand. And so although, again, like I said, I felt like I had all the knowledge there, I needed to be able to make these knives super sharp. It wasn't until I started practicing that I realized that, oh, there's actually like some technique and other things that I'm going to need to develop over time in order to be able to do this thing.
How did you feel? So you had all this information, you saved all these videos, and then you made the step to actually do it? Like, what was the feeling that you got?
I was really excited. I think when I sharpened them the first time, they got kind of sharp. But what I loved was like the longer that I drank the water of learning how to sharpen knives, now I'm getting to a point where I'm like, okay, I can actually get like a really solid edge on this knife. And I think that part of it too, that continual practice, not to make everything an analogy for school, but I think it's one of those things where oftentimes we touch on things for a hot minute and then it disappears into a grade book and it's never seen again. We all know this as teachers. Kids need repetitions and opportunities to do things over and over again. And I think for me, this was a very real experience of that very fact. If I just had taken my kitchen knives as they were the first time I sharpened them and left it at that, it would be okay. But now I realize like I have proper sharp knives. And that's simply because I put in a little bit more time and I had more repetitions with that work.
Nice. So hopefully we helped you with maybe a strategy you can use during this week where if you have a full cup of knowledge that you've collected, now maybe it's time to drink it. Maybe it's time to actually drink the water, apply what you have learned so that there's some fulfillment and not that full glass that's staring back at you.
Exactly. I hope everyone has the opportunity to do something that they've always wanted to do in this coming week or so. And we'll be back soon with another episode. So remember, be the iceberg
And climb your mountain.